Hello, my name is Brett Nielsen and I'd like to welcome you all to my apartment. Today I'm going to be doing an informative speech over the infamous murderer, Jack the Ripper. His name came about from a letter that was written to the police by someone claiming responsibility for the killings. There are not much known about the identity of Jack the Ripper, but what is known is he is very famous for the killings labeled the Conical Five. The Conical Five killings took place in the Whitechapel district located in the city of London in the year 1888. There were a total of 11 killings around the time of Jack the Ripper, but only 5 of them were believed to be committed by Jack. The other 6 did not have the same characteristics as the Conical Five. The murders by Jack the Ripper were much more brutal and more gruesome than the other 6. Jack the Ripper had a very specific type of person he was looking for when he was choosing his victims. All of the killings took place in the Whitechapel district in London. The Whitechapel district has been known to be very impoverished and a filthy area of the city. It is well known for prostitution, gambling, theft, and drinking. This was not well controlled by the police, which led the place to be a hotspot for sinners, thus making it an easier place for Jack the Ripper to carry out his murders. All 5 of the victims were prostitutes and they were all killed in a similar manner. Each of the victims had their own uniqueness to them though. Jack the Ripper's first victim was discovered propped up against a building in the streets of London. At first, the officers that found her were not able to tell if she was just dead or passed out because it was so dark out. Many of the officers got close enough to shine a lantern on her, and then they could clearly tell that she had been murdered. There were clear signs that she had been strangled to death before her body was mutilated. They were able to tell this because of the characteristics of the blood that they found at the crime scene. The doctors were also able to place her time of death only 30 minutes before the officers discovered her body. The next 3 victims shared similar characteristics, such as death by asphyxiation, the removal of intestines, the uterus, and the slashing of the throat. His 5th and final victim, named Mary Jane Kelly, was by far his most brutal and by far his most personal killing of the 5. She was discovered by her landlord, and the authorities were immediately contacted. When they entered the room, they saw the most horrific scene that Jack the Ripper had produced yet. She was found laying in the middle of her bed. Her right arm was partially removed from her body. Surface of her stomach and thighs were skinned. Her abdominal cavity was removed of its intestines. Her breasts were removed, arms mutilated, and face hacked to the point where they could not identify her. The only way they could identify her was by her hair and her eyes. Her heart was completely missing from the scene too. She did not die from asphyxiation like the other 4 victims, but by her carotid artery being severed. Jack the Ripper carried out his crimes around 3:30 a.m., which was about an hour or so before the people of the city would wake up to do just the rest of their day. He used the darkness to his advantage, along with the help of the thick smog that lingered over the city. The lack of streetlights was also an advantage of Jack's. Even if they were able to catch a glimpse of him, then they would not be able to identify him because of the lack of light and the smog covering. There were several suspects in the case of the Jack the Ripper killings. There was never anybody convicted though. The officers could not collect enough evidence to put someone away for them. Many people believe that it was someone of high intelligence or even a doctor because of the knowledge of the human anatomy. His victims were not just ripped apart, but more like taken apart. Jack the Ripper knew where things were in the body. The murders had massive media following. The newspaper had several pages written about Jack the Ripper and about what he had done. There were reporters all over the streets asking questions, trying to figure stuff out. There was also even several letters written to the local police, taunting the police, describing the gruesome killings, and even foreshadowing the killings that were to come. There were more than 100 suspects in the Jack the Ripper killings, which contributes to the widespread folklore and ghoulish entertainment that revolve around Jack the Ripper. No one has been convicted, which makes it one of England's most famous unsolved mysteries.